So the first question would be, since this is our theme, designing by impact, how to define design by impact. I'm just going to let this settle for a few seconds, because when then suddenly I give somebody the mic, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to answer. So how do you define design by impact? And I would say, let's start ladies first. Catherine, how would you answer that?
So for me, design for impact, it could be social impact, for example. You could also have design for negative impact. But what I like to think is that if you took away either of those words, you would still, design would mean impact, and impact could also mean design. Yeah.
Can you elaborate on the design can be impact and impact can be design?
Well, I think this is a very philosophical conversation as well. But if we, so maybe I should talk about it in terms of my company. So I'm in the automotive industry, and the way that we create impact is on two levels. One is with our users, so we do human-centered design through our, and it's, I guess, external to the company. And then we also have impact within the company, so organizational change, for example.
So I think that's a nice, maybe giving that to Magdalena, because I think like the impact inside or outside of companies, it's kind of also what you do at Digital Ventures, that you're somehow in companies, but with them creating something new. So how would you define impact by design?
I think it's very much related to your talk, actually. I was very taken by it. The fact of a skill sharing. I think this is something very difficult. So I think overall, to me, impact is adoption, because that means that you actually hit on some sort of need and you fulfill that need. And if it spreads and it makes a positive impact, and I think to me is it has to do with sustainability, but not only with environmental sustainability, but it kind of hits the 3E. Its impact, it's economical. It hits equity, equality, I would say, and environment. And if it hits the 3, I think it's impactful in all the possible stakeholders that it can touch, if that makes sense.
Well, I think my answer is really short. I think impact is if it's better than before. So however that looks like. But I think in the end it's about being better. Yeah.
Please feel free to clap whenever you want to clap. That's totally okay. Lucas, how would you define that? Or has everything been said?
I think the last answer was very short and precise. Yeah, impact for me is also to create something which enhances life of people, and of course if it does so, it will be probably also sustainable, or has to be sustainable, has to be also economically sustainable. And I think we as designers, like with the design part of it, I see our roles a lot in kind of pushing the boundaries and aligning those layers of human desirability, feasibility, and making it real, like really pushing and aligning it constantly.
And how do we actually know whether or not it's better? You said if it's better, but how do we know whether or not it's better actually?
So I think it feels like in design we work really hard right now to make impact measurable. So we come up with metrics and we try to capture that. But some things are really difficult to capture because the impact is on a long scale, or we need to be really patient in order to measure that. So probably I'd say if we ask people involved and they say it's better, it's better. Yeah.
I think that was a good one. Okay, now a more personal question, and since I didn't see anybody standing up, please. Oh, okay, here we go.
The way I understood that sounds all very technical to me. I think the way it's written there, it's more the mindset. So it's something at the very, very beginning. So if I go into that mental process where I need to design something, it's my mindset is, do I want to generate impact, or why do I do that? So does that make sense?
So it's like, basically you're saying it's a mindset thing.
It's mindset.
Who agrees or disagrees? There we have someone. Oh.
Wanted to add one word to it. I would say resilience, building resilience. I really think that this last talk was about creating the mindset of, like, within the organization of resilience that can be taken further to build more impact in the future. So,
yeah. In the hospital where I work, we talk about design for adoption. That's our goal. So we can design something that could potentially have a huge impact, but if no one's using it, that's our failure. So design for adoption is our goal.
All right. Design for adoption. So the next question, and I think that's a good kind of mental note or addition to that, the next question would be, can you give an example where your company, or even yourself, made an impact? And if you want to make that even more precise, think about the adoption, where it was actually adopted.
Okay. So I don't want to give an example when our company has had an impact, but when we think about impact of our work, we always think about others, right? But I wonder about the impact the work has on us. And I remember that I went out and did some research, and I came back and felt really sad, or that the research I've done or the project I've worked on has changed my ideas about a nation, a country, a culture, or a subject completely. And so I feel, you know, listening to the talk about Ryanair and working for a company like that, I wonder how that has, you know, what's the impact on Sneha, yeah. And I thought it's so brave that she, you know, that she fights for that. And it feels like that we service designer, we have a conscious, like, an ethical understanding, and we want to work for subjects which are good, and we want to have this impact. And so it feels like we need to think really, really hard about the briefs we get. And sometimes I think we need to push a little bit harder that the impact the work has on us is positive as well. So instead of just swallowing like a crap brief and just going along with it, maybe it's worth, like, you know, joining in Sneha in that fight against like dark patterns when we're asked to do them, and maybe do something different. So, yeah.
Thank you. Any thoughts on that, Catherine?
Simona, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I'm personally tackling with a lot at the moment. Working, so we do a lot of digital products, and in the automotive industry, sometimes you can feel like you're not making enough impact or enough positive impact. So it's really lovely to hear you say that there are some designers that are needed in this sector, because sometimes I feel like it's a really big struggle. But in terms of how our company has made an impact, I think I touched on before negative impact, and I know that Autovision is also part of the Volkswagen group. Something else I want to say is everything that I say here is my personal opinion and not that of the company, by the way. So don't put these things on Twitter and be like, Volkswagen says this. But yeah, we've also had a negative impact as well. So for example, Dieselgate, but there are positive things that have come of that as well. So for example, with the impact on the company hasn't necessarily been great, but at the same time, our team, the innovation team, has been able to push more for innovation because of all of the difficulties that have come from that. Yeah.
So I think I personally like a lot the idea of leading by example. So like working together with people instead of just working for a project and just delivering a delivery. So I think the impact which I consider as the greatest when really like our methods, our processes, and then the next step also the way we work together, the culture is adopted by our clients, and they even kind of demand that, hey, you know what, please bring more of your culture into our culture and really change, and also by this embed and create the impact in the company so that you can make yourself redundant. That would be like the best case. At least that's always also a request, because I think nowadays every company wants to be sustainably innovative, like continuously innovative, and that's a goal. And I think that's a great impact which we could achieve, and which we are working towards to also make it happen.
Do you want to add something to that?
I think I would talk about the same thing. I think I've been on a project actually last year, and we started with a very traditional.
Most of our clients are very big corporate clients, very traditional. This was a German client, very traditional. We went through the process like you described, and we always have, or we tried more so now, have the client members embedded in our teams and not in their environment, in our environment. And every single piece of that context is very important to kind of change that mindset. And again, I'll go back to the adoption, because after the project ended, we actually have another engagement. In another engagement, we have new people involved. But actually that knowledge has spread throughout the organization, because now they're actually calling us if we don't follow the process precisely. They actually are calling us on us. And they say things like, shouldn't we go in person to the interview? Shouldn't we do the observation in this phase? So it just brings a smile on my face, because it's incredibly that it actually spread through the organization to completely different department where people now know how to do things the right way. So that's an impact, I think.
I think to me, also one interesting aspect was like whenever, like before we did the conference, when I heard impact, I was always thinking about something positive. You think, like, as you mentioned, as designers, we want to change the world, and it's like, yeah, how can we make it better? And I think what you just mentioned, the diesel example, and also Snea today, where she said sometimes disaster creates opportunity. I think we don't ask ourselves often enough, when was the last time that my work made a negative impact? And thinking about, okay, what should we change in the future? Because I think even though we are in a rather open format here and everybody's quite colloquial, we tend to talk about the cool stuff we do and things we're making better and want to shine. But I think the thinking about the negative and the disasters feels a bit scary, but I think it's also, there's a lot in it where we can really learn from something. I would like to ask the next question first, not to the four of you, but really to the audience. And the question would be, what is your key takeaway from the last 2 days of Design for Impact? It doesn't have to be enormous, but what's your personal key takeaway? What are you taking home when you leave today? Or is it nothing? No impact at all? Too much? There's someone over here.
Hi, I'm taking away more questions actually than answers. I run a service design company within Impact Hub, which is part of the sort of global network of Impact Hub. I'm surrounded by the narrative of impact, social entrepreneurs trying to make good things. And we know that service design can contribute greatly to this conversation, can contribute to have a greater impact. Is not enough on its own, probably, to have that sort of impact. And what I take away is the amount of different perspectives, from the corporate world to the public sector to the third sector, and some of the conversation, even very micro, even startup and small community projects can deliver a great impact thanks to service design. My question is, though, send it back. Another question is, can service design deliver impact in any case, or is it about the services that we're designing, that some of those services create more impact than others? I don't know, it's a bit of a tricky question. But
who do you want to ask that question to?
I ask everybody here, really.
So can you just repeat that last part again?
Yeah, it's about service design. Service design always generates an impact. Could be positive, negative, we clarify that. But if we mean by impact the sort of social big purpose, or making a difference to the daily life of every people, or big disruptive innovation in a specific field, such as social innovation or public sector, it's about the services that we're designing that can make greater impact, or it's just service design generates impact in any case? It's a bit messy question.
So does service design generate impact in any case? What do you think?
Or is it about the services we choose to design?
Throw it over. Yeah, please.
So I thought my answer would be the sweet and trivial one that maybe it's not that useful, but I do think that service design generates impact in any case. Unfortunately, it's not comparable to the impact that you can generate by actually achieving great services. So what do I mean by achieving impact in any case? By the process that you take people through, you start to expose them to the world of challenging yourself and basically to the world of challenging everything. We had a workshop on gamification. We were talking about making games at some point. Actually, the experience of making a game is much more growth-enabling and much more entertaining, actually, than playing a game. So I think with service design is very similar. Basically, of course, if you make a service that makes great impact, this is much more that you can achieve because it also impacts more people, affects more people. But taking a team that might have some influence through this experience is already something that is worth doing on its own. That's what I think.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else who wants to share? Oh, there's somebody over there. Adam, maybe you can throw it over there.
Do you trust me?
I do.
Hello, yeah. I'm now a service design veteran, as I can see on my badge here. I have been to all the service design camps, and what I feel is that in the first service design camp and in the first service design drinks, it was more about the tools and the methods, and you introduced many tools to the community. And like, I don't know, this time we do jobs to be done method, or this time we do this and this method. And at first I thought the impact came from the right tools. And I think now the tool is kind of saturated. We know all the tools. There's not so much new tools coming up. And I guess now it's about implementing the tool in the companies. How to make sure that they continue the process, and more, I think now it's more about the people implementing the tools and changing their mindset and continuing. And that's why I think it's so important to be here, that we all kind of keep connected and update our experiences with how well is the process going with you and with your company, and how can you keep up the game, yeah.
So the takeaway would be, if I understand you correctly, that it's not about tools, but about how to implement them, and that we constantly need to iterate the way we do it.
Exactly, we need to exchange all the time with all this community to keep it up, and to see what did work at your company, what didn't work, maybe you can try this or that. We have experience with this didn't work at all, and yeah, it's more about this process, yeah.
Which is the perfect transition to my last question. So you've just defined what you think you need to have more exchange. And the last question for the panel would be, what would help you to increase your impact? And I would like to ask everybody here on stage, and the audience has a bit more time to think about it. So, Lucas, what would help you to increase your impact?
Good question. Well, I love to work in innovation and to innovate. That's kind of our purpose, and to enable and help our clients to innovate. And when it comes to innovation, you go always into unknown territory, into a field where a lot of unknowns. And I think what's really important to get into that is to really have, to give an Apple quote, courage to do it, to also work against the known and the known and trusted, and with it's working well, and to really have this culture and also this openness to go there and to try it out. And that's, I think, very important one to really also create impact and really bring something new and novel to the market.
I'm not sure if I agree with the question, because it says, what would help you to increase your impact? And what I would change about it is the you and change it to us, because I feel like as designers, we can only move forward as an industry or as a sector, as a whole, rather than just me singly. And then I'm thinking about everyone listening and how I can like relate this to you guys more, maybe more so than just this is what, yeah. So maybe it's about education, like, yeah, on a broad level education. But I think that, for example, engineers, they have a certification, and because it's what they do is very important, and as designers, what we do is very important as well. So maybe it's about creating a certain certification, for example, and then even on a more practical level, maybe education. It's about creating, yeah. The second part is, let me find my words. So for example, put your hand up if you live in Berlin. I think if we wanted to help educate, yes, Berlin is. If we want to help educate people that are coming into the design field, we need to have the technology to do that. So we could create, for example, a hub where they could come and learn about that. But if we wanted to do that, we would need to have second-hand devices. So perhaps it's about, pulling together and creating things like that.
Which I would translate to yay to the community. Yeah. Okay. Magdalena.
I will expand upon this theme. So I think to me, as a reference to earlier or the opening talk this morning, less silos and less labels and better collaborations. And I think we do have a lot of tools, it's true, and a lot of toolkits. But I think, for example, in our company, I think what I love about it and what's most challenging about it is that our teams are extremely multidisciplinary. And every single person on a team, even within the design community, we think differently, we work differently. But when you add these very different disciplines that now have to communicate very rapidly and work together very rapidly and maybe without knowing each other, there are so many tools that we can create to create faster teaming and collaboration for transdisciplinary teams. And I think events like this, for example, there are a lot of events that are still living more of the silos. So I think opening it up and then creating more of the transdisciplinary opportunities for people to learn from one another and work together, I think that's better impact at the end.
Thank you. Simone?
So I second that, and I think there's another aspect. So when I look at the work I've done that did not have an impact, I caught myself afterwards thinking that the client or the organization, they've been slow and not ready yet and just not, engaged enough or whatever they've done wrong. And I didn't always look at what I've done wrong. And so I think it helped me a lot when I understood that actually it's me who needs to adjust to the organization. And if the organization is slow and big and doesn't move fast enough, maybe I need to change my pace so that the work has impact. And when I started thinking like that, I realized that my work has more impact. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? I think we are about to close, but is there anybody in the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you, or kia ora, as we say. I think the last two keynotes of both days, Tracy's and Simone's, had a very critical, realist look at ourselves. And I think the one thing we can all do to increase our impact is to maintain that critical, deep, introspective look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. It's very easy. My colleague Tim and I taught a class last year at Stanford University, and it's very easy to treat everything like a startup, everything like an incubator, high fives and post-it notes and table tennis. It's all cool, but someone's going to be critical to us as a community, to go back to your looking after ourselves as a community. So I think that patient, calm, introspective, critical look at ourselves, which I found really great in Tracy and Simone's talk, is probably the most potent thing we can do for ourselves. Not rushing ahead of our audience, like looking at America, the divide between the Trump supporters and the others. There are some big divides in our world at the moment, and I think we need to keep calmly looking at ourselves. So yeah, those were the biggest takeouts.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I think there should be more service designers in engineer conferences, and we should stop patting ourselves on the back. I call bullshit to this kind of event, yet I'm an organizer too. And I think we should be sponsoring service designers to talk at engineer, talk at business, talk to entrepreneurs, talk to people that are the middle management. Yeah, that was awesome. There you go. Oh, sorry. I thought you had a camera.
Yeah, talking about what would change for me, I think if we would talk less about innovation and actually look more at the basics that need to be changed, then we could have huge impact. Because sometimes you don't need new stuff, you just need to make for a solid foundation and then build on top of that. So I think it would be nice sometimes to not have to innovate, but for it to be okay to just change things and tweak things here and then get an impact through that. Thanks.
Right, thank you. So I would say, or I would recommend, please keep the discussion going this afternoon when we have another final coffee session. For now, I would like to thank everybody who was here on the panel. Lukas, Catherine, Magdalena, and Simone, thanks for joining us.